It reminded me of, so there was this political theorist and legalist loyalist named Carl Schmitt. A legalist loyalist is a person that always, it's an archetype. There's always a legalist loyalist in every rise of a Nazi regime, authoritarian government, totalitarian fuckfest. There's always a legalist loyalist, and it's usually a person that legitimizes or at least hides the authoritarian rule with legalese or but mostly just legal. They legalize oppression basically, and they theorize a lot. They'll bend the law to make it go for the authoritarian because the Pam Bondi, so the people in the Congress are ostensibly, the way it's supposed to work is this. I'm not saying this is how it works, but the way it's supposed to work is this. The people in Congress serve the American people of their districts. We vote for a congressperson, like my person is the 40th District of California. That person I send to Washington to do my job, because I can't go to Washington. They represent me. Even though I don't like my congressperson, their job is to represent me. So if you attack her, you're attacking me. Now, Pam Bondi is supposed to serve the law. And that's a strange idea if you think about it. But her job is not to serve the people, really, even though the people technically are her boss. And the people, the Congress then are technically our representatives as their boss, as her boss, but she's supposed to serve the rule of law, the letter of the law. But that's not who she serves. Who do you think Pam Bondi works for? Does she work for the people? Does she work for the letter of the law? Let me know. Who do you think Pam Bondi works for? Why are you always playing with your nose, you railing booger sugar pre-stream? Yeah. Am I always playing with my nose? I kind of like, because I'm talking and like my nose sometimes itches while I'm talking. That's how that works. I'm speaking loudly. I'm breathing. Anytime you see people on stage, they'll often be like, they're talking, and they'll go like this because their nose is tickling. That's usually how that works. Thanks for asking. Hey, Speaker Sargon, great question. Money trails, say the elites. Money trails. Money plays, says the elites. Yeah, Trump. Yeah, that's right. He speaks. She works for Trump. She works for the authoritarian. She works for the dictator. That's right. And that's exactly why Carl Schmitt didn't work for the German people. He worked for Adolf Hitler, even though he was supposed to be working for the German people. Roberto Farinacci was Mussolini's guy. There's always a legalist loyalist. Now, another guy is Roy Cohn, and he was a legalist loyalist for Joseph McCarthy. But Roy Cohn was the guy who trained Donald Trump. It's so crazy that the dude who was the legalist loyalist for McCarthy was Donald Trump's mentor. Crazy, right? When he was young. The murderer of Ethel Rosenberg was Donald Trump's mentor. Now, last of Trump's terms, Donald Trump was often heard saying, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" As in his mentor, but he isn't saying that he needs a mentor. He wants a legalist loyalist, which he couldn't find in Bill Barr. Bill Barr told him that the election wasn't rigged. Bill Barr told him that he lost the election. He doesn't need that shit. He wants a Roy Cohn. Attack, attack, attack. Never admit defeat. And what was the other one? Never admit defeat. Attack, attack, attack. I forget the third one. Because I'm not a fucking Machiavellian. Yes. Thank you. So Garland was for Biden. No. So Merrick Garland, that's one of the issues with Merrick Garland. You see, Merrick Garland was more of like a ruminator. What about the rule of law? Let's think this thing through. Let's trust the process. Let's hire an independent prosecutor, Jack Smith, because we don't want to seem like we're partisan hacks. That's why they hired Jack Smith, was so that Merrick Garland wouldn't look like a legalist loyalist. That's the whole point of an independent counsel. counsel because they don't want it to seem like Merrick Garland is going after Donald Trump because of perceived transgressions or indignities that he suffered at the hands of Donald. So they hire Jack Smith, who's a registered Republican, and they're like, look, we got this Republican guy. He's going to go letter of the law. Same thing with Robert Mueller, was the same idea. You get an independent contractor, independent prosecutor, and they do those types of things so that you don't come off as a partisan hack. That's the whole point. Pam Bondi doesn't believe that shit. Neither does Donald Trump. They don't like that shit. They want their person going to bat for them. And the DOJ, that's not their job. That's not what they're supposed to do. The DOJ traditionally has been more or less independent from the executive branch, even though there's some overlap, right? Because you have the justice right in the title, right? You have the judiciary and the prosecutors. You have all these things going on. And they report to the president. Barack Obama said that like he was barely involved with that part because he had Eric Holder, and Eric Holder would go do that stuff, and he would report to Barack Obama and tell him what was happening. But he didn't really get too in the nitty gritty because he had bigger shit to do. Donald Trump doesn't have bigger shit to do. His biggest agenda item is revenge. He said it on the campaign trail. I will be your retribution. I will be your retribution. I will be your salvation, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, that's what it is. See, I told you, like, people will be saying really horrible things about Pam Bondi, misogynist things, and it's going to be one of those items of interest for probably the next 20 years. I think this is setting women back 20 years. I think it's bad news, man. Ladies, they are going to use this against you. They are going to use Pam Bondi against you for the next 20 years. Holy shit, man. God damn, it's just bad branding for ladies. Sorry, it's really bad. You got Ghislaine Maxwell and Pam Bondi. Not even, no shits given about the victims. None. Zero. No remorse. No apologies, and she will never apologize. She'll be just like Carl Schmitt. And by the way, the good news is that the regimes always turn on these people. So like Roberto Farinacci was turned on, and he died in disgrace. He died at a firing squad. Carl Schmitt, he survived. He only did a year in jail after the Nazi regime fell because the Nazis turned on him in 1936 and they almost killed him. But he escaped with his skin. He survived, and he did fascist talks in fascist Spain. Like he would travel to Spain and do his fascist academic talk, and then he would come back to Germany. But he lived in kind of disgrace for the rest of his life. And Roy Cohn famously disbarred, excommunicated. He ended up at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago. He lived there for a while. He died penniless, alone, disgraced. They made a movie about him. They made two movies about him. Roy Cohn, famous legalist loyalist of the American. He actually took the archetype that we've seen throughout time, and he turned it to be this American example that Pam Bondi is now completely, totally embodying.